Hello and welcome to the latest Manufacturing Management Live panel. My name is Chris Beck. I'm the editor of Manufacturing Management magazine. Today we're going to be discussing one of the biggest challenges that's facing the industry and has been for some time now, and it's the need for skills and skilled workers. The skills crisis has been very well documented and numerous fixes have been tried and suggested in recent years, everything from apprenticeship levies to the newly introduced T-level qualifications. But are these enough? Should we be thinking outside of the box and looking elsewhere to find solutions? Joining me today to look at some of these alternative ways of bridging the skills gap are Verity Davidge, the Director of Central Policy at Make UK, the manufacturers organisation, Lance Harris, Manufacturing Sector Lead at the Ministry of Justice's New Futures Network, and Henry Powell, Commercial Director of Inpress Plastics Limited based in Littlehampton. Now, thank you, all of you, for joining us today. Lance, can we start with you? Can you tell us a little bit about the New Futures Network and how it helps manufacturers?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. So we're a small department nestled in the Ministry of Justice. I suppose we're commercial prison industries, really. And our role is to bring about production in prison workshops throughout the country, England and Wales, and in doing so, offer capacity and capability to usually commercial manufacturers who outsource work to us. And as a result of that, offenders gain really great skills, qualifications and experience. So they're manufacturing goods, but the bigger drive, of course, is to release them with those facets that we hope they'll turn away from a life of crime, glue their families together, get employment and start living kind of law-abiding lives. And in doing so, I think we're helping British industry because there's a huge talent pool within prisons. And I think it's something that people are becoming more and more aware of, but we just want to get that message out there more and more that looking at offenders is a real beneficial way for industry to recruit from.
Sure, yeah, and Henry, I know that you guys down in Inpress are beneficiaries of the New Futures Network. How have you? What benefits have you seen? How have you got involved with the network?
So we've been working with the prison service for the last 9 years or so. We have a number of initiatives that have taken off over that period, and are quite well integrated now. If you follow, if you will, what we call sort of the talent pool through, we have a facility at Ford Prison, very close to our factory in Littlehampton in West Sussex. There, what we're doing is we're doing second ops work, assembly, trimming for products that are made down the road at our factory. So we'll have a team of people in that building who are learning general manufacturing good practices, the basic skills that are needed to be part of our organisation. It's an ideal sounding bed to get new recruits in, to get really productive work done, to get them trained, and get them moving on, thinking about the day when release comes, because typically we'll be getting people there who are 1 to 2 years away from release and probably who have served longer sentences. So they may have been away from society for 5 or 10 years or more. So those individuals there, we find take a little while to get up to speed with working life again, but when they do, very productive, lots of initiative, and people who, in our experience, are really keen to learn new skills, to start a new life, and to be given a new opportunity. From there, what we're able to do is move them down the road under the ROTL scheme, which is release on temporary license, where they are approved to come out into society every day for a working day, be it sort of 9 till 5 or 8 till 6, whatever the day shifts that we're working and we need them for. They'll come to us and work in our factory. And we've got people working there in the 18 months prior to their release. That's a really important move because it gets them back into society, back working in a normal environment, back familiar with the real world, and also building those skill levels up because, of course, actually at the factory, we're able to take them down one of a number of routes, be it warehousing and forklift, might be part of the buildings team, might be actually working on the machines, might be in the engineering department learning about tool making. And they can go down a route and develop more advanced skills, more confidence, and become productive members of our company. And then as they approach release, some of them won't want to stay in the local area after release because they'll have families they want to return to in other areas of the country. But some will actually want to stay in our area and work for us. So we have a cohort of people who have been the whole way through that process, develop skills as they've gone through, and then when they're released, they come and work for us. When needed, we can offer some assistance, helping them get set up with accommodation in the local area and the other things that they need. But actually, if they've worked for us in the 18 months prior to release, there are a number of things that happen to the money that they're earning, and they are earning a real wage. They're earning the same wage as anybody else who would come and work for us from society. So whatever grade they get to, they're earning that wage. Quite a lot of that goes, obviously, first of all, in tax, but secondly, there is a fairly sizable chunk that's taken by the prison service and goes towards all sorts of things that are needed in the prison service. But then finally, they are left with savings so that when they come out, they've got a nest egg that helps them to launch into society, get that first flat, get that first bit of accommodation, set themselves up so that they can be active, functioning, come and work for us, and then develop careers. And we've got people who have been doing that over the last few years. Some of them then move on, as all workforces do. You learn skills, you look for other opportunities, might want to go to another area of the country, but some of them stay with us. And for us, that's a really important delivery mechanism for the next generation of talent that we need, because as you alluded to right at the beginning of the conversation, the need for skills for raw recruits is really key in our industry. One thing we're really good at in manufacturing, we're really great at taking very keen people with potential and training them. Manufacturing is almost uniquely good at that in this country. We've got training programs within the industry, within each company, and we can take people sometimes with very little qualifications, sometimes, you know, barely having finished and left school with anything, and actually we'll find across the wide variety of activities that happen within a manufacturing organization, we'll find their right melee, their right spot. We'll train them up into that, and we can take people with those low skills and make them really productive, successful, happy members of society. And we can do that just as well with offenders. So I suspect I've probably given you rather a long answer to a short question, but I hope that gives you a feel for what we're doing.
No, absolutely. Yeah, it's and Verity, I guess it's a good point to bring you in here. Henry kind of alluded to the need for skills and the skills gap in manufacturing. How are Make UK seeing it, especially, you know, with the challenges of the last 9 or 10 months or so?
So you're right. I think the skills gap has always been the manufacturing sector's Achilles heel. Even our most recent research, which was undertaken during the pandemic, found, you know, 2/3 of companies saying that access to skills is the biggest barrier in their local area, you know, above infrastructure, whether it's digital, physical infrastructure, it's always skills. That's always the kind of the big one there. And when you ask companies, you know, why are you kind of struggling to recruit, you always have, you know, applicants lacking the right technical skills, the right experience. But also importantly, I think for this discussion, is just a lack of the volume of applicants that are needed. So, you know, across manufacturing, I think regardless of the roles, you know, we have a huge kind of job roles availability at the higher skill level, but also at the kind of the lower skilled level, and particularly acute at that technician skill level as well. So it really is, you know, cutting across all of the manufacturing sector. And I think we see quite a lot of initiatives on offer to employers. You mentioned some earlier, Chris. You've got apprenticeships, you've got T-levels, you've now got Kickstart, you've got sector-based work academies, there you've got a lifetime skills guarantee. There are, you know, there's a myriad of initiatives there. But I think what employers are looking for is exactly what Henry said, is they're looking for individuals who, have that willingness and that motivation to want to work and often stay within the business. And I think sometimes that's what those initiatives lack, that they're often seen with very kind of short term, maybe a bit of a tick box, both for, that individual, but also the business. And that's why things like apprenticeships work so well in manufacturing, because it is that investment from all parties, and why we see so many of those apprentices then, stay on in the business. I always go around, well, virtually now, visiting manufacturing companies, and I always get told former apprentice, former apprentice, former apprentice, even in the boardroom. So what you want is initiatives such as these, which really allow, motivated people who really want to work and bring value to the business. And actually, I think we need to be shining a spotlight more on these initiatives, and not just kind of what is the kind of the buzzword or the big idea that's been announced most recently.
Absolutely. Lance, have you got anything, as a kind of skills provider, I suppose?
Indeed. Yeah, it's really interesting, because a couple of things for us is offenders come into prison with often a huge range of skills, and at one end, they're professional people. They've got a range of qualifications and work experience that are really valuable, both for us in our workshops while they're in custody, but of course on release. And at the other end of the scale, we've got people who've opted out of the education system, not been particularly beneficial to society, and we inherit them as people that need a lot of support in terms of getting work ready. And so we've got this huge range of people that sometimes we don't pick who comes into our workshops, but our obligation, rightly so, is to try and work with offenders and get them to a point where they can be released and go back into mainstream society. So I think we all want workers that are punctual, diligent, can take instruction and work well in teams. Everybody wants that, whatever workplace we work in. But for us, we also attach relevant trade qualifications. So within our workshops, we've got engineering, clothing, textiles, printing, laundries, call centers, injection molding, obviously with what Henry does. We deliver trade-related qualifications so that offenders, upon release, when they're being interviewed or on ROTL, they've got a real license and proof that they've got great skills, and why not employ them? So our role is quite different from, I think, normal manufacturing environments, in that we get people who don't want to be there at one point, and we've got to convince them that work is good and that they can develop and get away from crime on release. And part of what we do is deliver qualifications that link into what Verity said. That skills gap is a huge challenge for manufacturing. So we want to deliver the right skills, the right qualifications, and the right work experience to make offenders really attractive to potential employers.
Yeah, absolutely. And Henry, is that something that you've experienced? You're getting the right kind of people in, and they're eager to learn.
Yeah, I'm picking up on what Verity said about the shortage of raw recruits and the volume of raw recruits in the economy. What Lance said, very similar message really. A major constricting factor for manufacturing is the people that we need to do the job as we grow our businesses, being able to recruit them. We've obviously had the benefit of our membership of the EU for the last 10 years. And if you look in a lot of our manufacturing organizations, there are a lot of EU workers and people who have arrived with low skills and possibly low language abilities, and who have now, it's probably more like 15 years, over that period, moved up and up and up into the point now where they're running, team leaders, production managers, tool makers, machine setters, robotics operatives. We have developed that generation of people up, and they've been a great supply chain the EU has to manufacturing in the UK, and enable us to develop that manufacturing generation. Thank God they're all getting settled status, but the next generation of manufacturing raw recruits is probably not going to come down that supply chain. And I think that's really important then to be looking for other supply chains. And for us, we regard the prison service as a talent supply chain, and it is. And it's actually much more effective in terms of the percentage success rate than it is if we advertise and get people from our local community, because it's a concentrated group of people who are looking for a second chance, a new start, to develop in a different direction. And it's really important to make that point. This is not, although there is a good cause charitable element, and there's certainly a societal benefit in that we're taking people and we're turning them into productive people, this is not that. This is actually a great resource. It's a recruitment resource, and it should be regarded as such.
Absolutely.
Henry,
Yeah,
Chris,
cool.
do you mind if I just add to that? I think, of course, Henry and I, we've worked together on this project for a number of years, and there's benefits for Inpress plastics, for the prison service, but particularly for offenders. And this works. And I think there's other business benefits to British manufacturing. You know, if you're outsourcing abroad, there's a reshoring opportunity to move production into our prison industry workshops. There's a great corporate social responsibility angle that works. And we did a survey, and I think 2/5 of organisations we deal with who employ offenders on release say that it's increased their diversity within their workforce by about 2/5, which is brilliant. So apart from the other things we're good at, like production and quality and deadline and pricing, there's real benefits beyond that about reducing the amount of victims, making our communities a bit better because people are in work, and reducing the burden on the taxpayer, because going through the justice system as an offender costs a lot of money. So the more we can keep out through work, the better it is for all of us.
Picking
absolutely.
up on that point that Lance made, one of the things that I learned in this process, and it was a bit of a shock to me actually, but you didn't have to think too far through it. The people who suffer in many ways the worst when an offender goes to prison, not actually the offender, it's the family they leave behind, because they pretty well always fall straight into poverty. There's no income. Often there's assets are being stripped away as the offender goes, because proceeds of crime and all that sort of thing. And so families are left in very difficult circumstances for very long periods of time. And when you give an offender a job, and they're earning money both in prison and when they come out, it dramatically changes the fortune of the family, and particularly the children. We've seen instances where whole families have come to thank our factory, where families have come and made a meal for 60 people in the canteen at lunch because it's been so good for them, where a particular guy has come to me and it was his daughter's 16th birthday, and she hadn't been talking to him really since he'd gone to prison, but he'd managed to buy her the pair of trainers that she'd always wanted, and it had helped turn around their relationship a bit. And there is the nice side of that that is important. And for each one of those stories, you're lifting not only the opportunity for the offender in the future, but you're lifting the family as well.
Absolutely, that's really nice to hear. I suppose there's more to, like you say, just the one individual getting a job and being able to forge a career after prison. There's all the knock-on effects as well. Just going back to some of the earlier stuff we touched on, and Verity, I'll bring you in here. Obviously, it's been a weird year, and who knows what the future has in store, both in terms of the recovery from the pandemic and the other political things that are going on. Have you seen manufacturers' attitudes to skills and sourcing the right skills, and indeed the types of skills that are needed? Have you seen them changing in the last year or so?
Definitely, we've seen lots of changes to kind of patterns on recruitment behaviours, kind of the skills needs, the job roles that will be available. It's been a tough year for everyone, including the manufacturing sector. So we've seen half of our members make redundancies, with up to a quarter of staff being cut. So, that they're huge numbers. And we've done a lot of work on how you try to retain those people, retain those skills, for fear of them kind of leaving the sector, becoming too detached from the labour market, or just taking a different path for their lives. But I think that we are at the verge when that might pick up again. So when we've been asking companies about the 2021 and the year ahead, the majority are now saying that they think the number of employees will increase next year. Permanent employees. Temporary employees, they're not sure at. Permanent numbers, they think that they're going to increase them back up again. And again, that's back to where we then see these opportunities for these sorts of initiatives. Like you said, there's lots of kind of uncertainties at the moment for businesses, but one thing that they do know from what will happen on the 1st of January is that we will have this new immigration system. And whilst it's probably not at the forefront of their minds right now, when they go to look to recruit from outside of the UK, they will soon find that they're faced with a whole new system that requires lots of processes, lots of fees and lots of costs. And I think that would automatically just turn businesses to really looking at the local labour market and what's to offer and the various kind of local initiatives that are available to them. So I think we'll see a huge shift, at least in the interim, on how companies recruit. So I think that's the kind of the first part of it. I think the second is just where those future jobs and skills are, and they're tending to be in that digital and green arena. So I think a lot of then the initiatives, skills initiatives and programs that are being introduced and delivered, it's really important that we begin to just interweave those concepts in them. When it comes to digital skills, for example, it's one of those skill sets that's now just assumed that you have. And it can be really broad, it's digital skills and I can use Excel, versus digital skills as I'm a laboratory technician, and digital skills for me is completely something different. But also just making sure that all of these initiatives really are capturing these things. And same with the green agenda, all those considerations of net zero, that's going to be really on the top of manufacturers' agenda. So even I'm beginning to see a lot of companies think, well, what if if I do a skills audit, where are the skills gaps? What do we need in the future? And I think that digital and green piece is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Henry and Lance, are you seeing, well, I guess Lance in particular, are you seeing, new courses, new qualifications as something that you could offer?
Indeed. Whilst I'm the national lead for manufacturing, I also the lead for agriculture and horticulture. Two great activities in prisons. But another colleague of mine is our IT national lead, and the skills around there is really interesting, because whilst in our workshops we want to, where we can, have up-to-date machinery and be delivering skills to prisoners that are relevant to commercial industry, we can't always do that. But what we want to do is try and keep abreast of what the sector demands of its workforce. So more and more in our workshops are we attaching associated skills, not just, technician or operatives or manufacturing, but things like IT. So for instance, in our engineering workshops, we deliver CNC skills. So offenders are actually programming, creating software that is used in the manufacturing process as the next, part of the process. And it's not just for us developing machine minders that Henry would appreciate, but also Henry would love to have somebody in his office doing production control via a software program. And we're delivering that in prisons because that's where we know the skills shortage and the skills demand exists. So whilst people might have a view of prison industries, dark Dickensian, dimly lit, workshops, it's not like that at all. They're modern, well-equipped, productive areas. And so they should be, to equip prisoners with the right skills on release.
It seems like we need to do a bit of the educating of what happens in prisons, the same way that we've had to do a lot of education about the real perception of manufacturing as well. So I think we'll all feel your pain on that one, in that we spend a lot of time saying, actually, manufacturing looks like this. Not everyone wears blue overalls, and we're not all widget makers. So I think maybe there is, for my side, it's actually going out to our wider Make UK members and the manufacturing industry and saying, actually, have you gone in and have you seen what happens there? Have you seen how it does actually replicate the real world of work? Because that's exactly what I think companies are looking for, and it's probably assumed that that's not happening.
Every time a prisoner comes into one of our workshops through the door, our staff have to make a pretty quick assessment about what's best for that offender and take them on a journey that they end up working for someone like Henry and being a valued member of the workforce and society.
Sure, yeah, Henry. I mean, you're right at the coalface. You are a manufacturer. How are you seeing the skills, your skills requirements, and the kind of skills that you're looking for? How are you seeing them change, and how are you going about bridging that gap?
We're growing quite significantly. So in the last 12 months, we've doubled our turnover and quite significantly increased our workforce. Where we're increasing numbers now is a lot of those higher end skills. So the new production floor we put in this year would have previously had, over a 24-hour period, 21 people around the machines. We've pretty well replaced them with 6-axis robots this year. So robot programming, maintenance is a key growth area for us. We plan on putting a new production facility in next year, which will all be robotic as well. So that's a key requirement for us. I think, however, as you grow, and I see significant opportunities for, we're in medical products and industrial. We are seeing dual pressures at the moment. There is a reshoring going on because the Far East has become risky, and at board level down, you're seeing challenge about de-risking, I think, and certainly over-reliance. And I think we've seen that in all sorts of supply chains during the crisis, and that is coming through in nuts and bolts decisions about where next generation and actually current generation production is going to be in supply chains. So we're seeing that, and that's I think that's been going on for a little while, but it's really picked up pace this year. We're also seeing now, I have to say, we're seeing reshoring in Europe, and I think people have been concerned about the tariffs that we may be seeing and the supply chains that may be a little bit more complicated. So we're seeing that as well. So we see lots of opportunity for growth. But as we grow, I think we'll be looking at some of those higher end skills, as well as continuing to feed the talent chain for the development all the way through the business.
And I guess that you're facing more than most the kind of challenges head on. And how are you going about finding? I mean, obviously you're using the prison service, but you said that you obviously recruit in more traditional ways, should we say? Do you do apprenticeship programs and things like that?
Yeah, so we have apprenticeships in business management, tool making, machine setting, engineering. We've just announced we're going to be running 3 apprenticeships next year, and one of them will be in robotics. So that's an important. We may, depending on how we do in the first quarter, we may move that up to 2. In fact, I think that's important. We have a very strong relationship with Chichester University, who are local to us. They have a excellent series of apprenticeship degrees in engineering, in computer science, in business management, and we're feeding the supply chain of those pool talents with that. We started out the crisis in the few days immediately after the lockdown. All of our senior management team got COVID-19, and we went into a situation where we were all sick. And the people that came through at that point were 2-degree apprentices, 20 and 21 years old, who didn't get sick, despite the fact they'd been around us. And they ran the business while we recovered. And for a business that runs 24 hours a day, 6 days a week, that was really impressive. It was well above and beyond what we expected of them. But the crisis dictated that was what was needed. And that apprenticeship stream for us is really important. We get people in as they leave school. We go and talk in our local schools. We get people who we think are, the brightest that we can get hold of, and they do really well for us. And I think that route, which goes A-level degree apprenticeship, I mean, obviously, you save a huge amount of money. You don't get in debt. In fact, you make money all the way through that journey. You develop skills alongside your degree, which actually put you several years ahead when you come out of university with a degree than people who have just been at university. And we've certainly got people in that stream who are certainly future leaders.
I mean,
and who have led already, in fact.
Absolutely, it sounds like they're already pretty much there. I mean, that's a very impressive story and testament to the kind of quality of apprenticeships and apprentices that you're getting. Verity, obviously, apprentices have been around for hundreds of years. The concept of them, and Henry is Henry there was describing a couple of shining examples of the very best that apprentices around. Is there still an appetite? Obviously, there's still an appetite for apprentices. Is that appetite changing? Has the Apprentice Levy had an effect? Have other legislation and things that have come in, have they affected apprenticeships in the way that they're viewed?
I mean, apprentices have always been the lifeblood of most manufacturing businesses. When I think there was the big push on apprenticeships by government almost 10 years ago, it seemed like 2010 was the year when it was all about apprenticeships. I think as a sector, a lot of members turned around and said, well, yes, apprenticeships are a thing. We've always been doing them. You don't need to kind of preach to the converted. I think there's been challenges, but also opportunities. So for a lot of companies, yes, the introduction of the Apprenticeship Levy, I think at the start, a whole new kind of funding system, a way of learning, was a lot for companies to handle. A lot of large companies who were spending quite a lot into their Apprenticeship Levy and still now were struggling to spend it. So Make UK, along with other business groups, have always been kind of calling for greater flexibility on, well, actually, if training budgets are pretty tight at the moment because of COVID-19. Actually, if there's a pot of money available to spend on training and skills, we should really be trying to spend that, because getting a skilled workforce is crucial for our long-term recovery. I think the pandemic also had a major hit. So in the first lockdown, we of course saw schools, colleges and providers all forced to close. And so we saw a lot of pausing and cancelling or postponing of apprenticeships. I think that then when that was lifted and we had this second lockdown announcement, which said that schools and colleges could stay open, then employers got a little bit more confident that they could kind of press the restart button on their apprenticeship programs. That said, for the year ahead, this kind of academic year, we just had 45% of companies saying that they were planning to recruit an apprentice. Now that makes it even higher in other sectors, but that's normally a figure that would sit at around 75-80%. So we've seen a lot of companies just pull away a little bit this year. My hope would be next year it would kind of come back again, but I think it all depends on the kind of the great unknowns as we enter the end of this year, and of course the longer term impact of the pandemic. But what I see is actually a lot of companies still prioritising their apprenticeship programs above everything else. So while we've had about 30% of companies who have paused apprenticeships during the height of the pandemic, compare that to 3/4 that cut their wider training budgets. So actually the other training budgets took a hit, and they were trying to retain those apprentices. And I think that's back to kind of Henry's point of that longer term, these are your future leaders. And that investment that you make is really acknowledged by them. So should your senior management team all come down with COVID-19, you can step up to the plate. And I think actually, what a fantastic story. And also this use of more degree apprenticeships as well. That perfect balance of academic and technical learning. We always put them in two different camps. And yet degree apprenticeships completely bring those together in a model that is really just workable for employers. So I think the more of those kind of combined methods of learning and training is just exactly what employers are craving right now. Absolutely,
yeah. And we've talked about the work that the Ministry of Justice are doing through the New Futures Network as kind of an alternative, if you like, to apprentices. What other ways can manufacturers look for skills? They can look inside prisons, they can go down the kind of more traditional apprenticeship routes. But are there any other manufacturers out there that you know of who are looking for skills in slightly different ways?
Yeah, so you always see the kind of traditional apprenticeship programs and graduate schemes.
Mm-hmm.
I think, again, graduate schemes this year, because of everything that's happened, have probably taken a bit of a backseat, again, more so than apprenticeships. And then I think with the various initiatives such as Kickstart that's come from the Department for Work and Pensions, we've seen great interest in that. Of course, that came with the slight kind of caveat criteria that as a single employer, you would have to offer 30 placements, but had this idea that if someone was a gateway, they could apply on your behalf. And Make UK is in fact a gateway for our members. So off the top of my head, I think we have about 150 placements that are about to go live. So we're looking to see how we can support small businesses who couldn't offer 30, to say we will apply on your behalf to take on those people. Yeah. So that's a 6-month programme of taking on someone between the ages of 16 and 24 who are on universal credit or at risk of long-term employment, and giving them just that real kind of training and opportunities. So I think that's obviously one that's definitely of interest to a lot of companies at the moment. And then there are a lot of other schemes. So we've got these new digital boot camps, so where you just need a kind of a 12-week intensive course that maybe just upskilling or reskilling your workforce. Again, I think we see a lot of appetite now from employers for more of that modular bite-sized learning, kind of incremental training. So we're seeing companies do a lot in that space as well. And now we've just had the announcement from the Prime Minister on this lifetime skills guarantee. So that will allow any adult who hasn't got a level 3 qualification to take that course for free. And amazingly, when they published the courses that are available, there are a lot in manufacturing engineering. So that I think we finally got to that point when we really see how the role of manufacturing engineering will play for our recovery kind of longer term, and that actually we need those suite of skills and qualifications.
Absolutely, yeah. Henry, as someone who is an employer, are you obviously you've had great success with apprentices, you've had great success with the work with the prisons. Are you looking at alternative ways of finding skills, especially, like you say, as it may become more challenging in the next few months?
So I think we're cautiously optimistic. I think that the relationship that we have with the prison service will plug in at that level and replace what we're losing during the transition and past January the 1st. And that has in fact been working for us for several years, so it's tried and tested for us. I think other than that, at all levels, we are in the national competition for skills. I think it's really interesting. One might have imagined that at the end of a really challenging economic year, there'd be a lot more talent around. I don't think there is. I think as soon as a talented individual at the moment in this country finds themselves at a loose end, there is usually someone in their network who will pretty fast snap them up. So it's a competitive environment, and it's an environment where you need to think around and use all of the tools at your disposal. And we continue to do that all the way through, from agencies looking for staff for us on temporary basis, people trying to place people long term and identify management roles. That can be quite expensive, but that's the environment we're in.
Sure. We're kind of coming to the end now, I suppose. So Lance, I guess if we give the last word to you, how can manufacturers find out more if they want to get involved with the New Futures Network? If they want to find out a little bit more information about it, what can they do?
Indeed, Chris. So I think the easiest way is to go through our offender employment website. So dare I plug it, offenderemployment.campaign.gov.uk, and that will filter down to people like me to make those links with those organisations that think that this could be for them.
Can't recommend it highly enough. And Lance and his team do a super job.
Good to hear.
Henry,
Good to hear.
thank you. On that note.
Yes. On that note, yes. Thank you all. Thank you all, Lance, Henry, and Verity there for what was a really interesting discussion. Hopefully everyone who's watching and has watched this has now has a different mindset on how they can plug the skills gap, especially with some of the challenges that are due to come in the next few months. Thank you once again, everybody, for taking part, and thank you everyone for watching. Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.